Today, discuss about cardiovascular system, an important topic, hypertension. So, preamble, first I want to let you know something about its epidemiology, how to define hypertension, and just how do you classify it, precautions to take and how to measure blood pressure, etiology, what are the target organs that are damaged, or why you want to learn about hypertension. Let me describe this as an important public health burden because the lifespan of developing hypertension in aged people, that is around 65 years, is 90%. The overall prevalence of hypertension in adults is around 30 to 40%, whereas in people more than 60 years, the prevalence is more than 60%. So this itself will tell you hope it is audible. Okay. So these prevalence percentages will percentages will tell you the importance of hypertension in public health as well as in health of the individuals. Why you want to learn about this hypertension is there is a 4-fold increase of cerebrovascular and 6-fold increase of cardiovascular morbidity in persons with hypertension. And if it comes back to the prevalence in Asia, nearly 46.5 million people are estimated to be hypertensive by the year 2025. This underlines the importance, the public health importance of this particular condition. And one more alarming feature of this particular condition is in children aged between 11 to 17 years, in a study, it has been found that nearly 6.6% of children, that's adolescents, are hypertensive in urban areas and 2.5% in rural India. So this is let you know the importance of this particular condition. It's a rapid urbanization, changing lifestyles, aging population of the country, and lack of awareness, maybe literacy may be an issue, poverty may be an issue here because of lack of awareness, and underdiagnosis, even in diagnosed patients, suboptimal control are some of the issues clogging for proper control and management of hypertension. And peculiarly, salt consumption is also quite high in our region because we use pickles, we use all stored items. So, like papad, pickles, etc. We add salt also while cooking food in certain regions of the country. So, there is a high salt consumption in this particular region. That's also one of the reasons for such a high prevalence of this particular condition. Then, how do you define this? And what are the classification? What is hypertension? Hypertension is defined as, see, it is a continuous variable. Blood pressure is a continuous variable. It is defined as a level of blood pressure at which benefits of treatment outweigh the risks. So the benefits of treatment outweigh the risks. So if you treat the patient, definitely it's going to be beneficial. At that level is taken as hypertension. So it is defined as the systolic blood pressure value of 140 or more than 140 millimeters of mercury, or diastolic blood pressure of 90 or more than 90 millimeters of mercury. As per JNC7, and in addition, taking the home blood pressure and ambulatory blood pressure monitoring into consideration. Broadly, a consensus definition has been given by ESC and also by American Academy of Hypertension in NICE. So as per this, The optimal hypertension is less than 120. The optimal blood pressure is less than 120 by 80 millimeters of mercury. Whereas range between 120 to 129 systole and 80 to 84 is considered normal. Whereas between 130 to 139 systole and 85 to 89 diastole is considered as high normal. Anything above 140 by 90 is considered as hypertension, as I already told you. So 140 to 159 systole and 90 to 99 diastole is considered as grade 1 hypertension, and 160 to 179 systole and 100 to 109 diastole is considered as grade 2, and more than 180 by more than 110 diastole is considered as grade 3 hypertension. So what is the importance of systolic? What is the importance of diastolic blood pressure? See, as the age advances from childhood to adolescence to elderly, the blood pressure continuously raises as the person ages. But whereas the diastolic blood pressure tends to decline from midlife because of arterial stiffening. So the diastolic blood pressure also increases only up to the middle of the life, say up to 50 years or so, after which the diastolic blood pressure tends to fall because of arterial stiffening. Whereas systolic blood pressure will continue to rise. So that's why the systolic blood pressure is an important risk contributor after midlife, whereas diastolic blood pressure is associated with increased CV risk and is commonly elevated in younger people less than 50. So in younger people, diastolic as well as systolic blood pressure together are taken for considering for estimating the risk, whereas in elderly, systolic blood pressure is an important contributor to the risk. So in the elderly, because of fall in diastolic blood pressure and increase in systolic blood pressure, the pulse pressure becomes more. The pulse pressure is systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. So increased pulse pressure has an adverse prognostic significance in persons middle age and above. Now, so before concluding definitions, I want to tell some of the various terminology is used here. Acute severe hypertension. What is this? There is what is called as, previously called as hypertensive crisis. What is hypertensive crisis? Under this terminology, there is what is called as hypertensive emergency. What is hypertensive emergency? It is an acute elevation of blood pressure, acute severe hypertension that is accompanied by target organ damage. I will let you know what is target organ damage in subsequent sections. So, acute severe elevation of hypertension, blood pressure, accompanied with target organ damage is called as hypertensive emergency, because this is the condition where the patient needs to be admitted and parenteral treatment has to be started. Whereas hypertensive urgency means it's also an acute elevation of blood pressure that is without target organ damage. So this is the difference between an emergency and an urgency. So what are the conditions where there will be hypertensive urgency? Emergency, the malignant hypertension is also a condition of hypertensive emergency. It's characterized by accelerated microvascular damage with necrosis in the wall of the small arteries and arterioles. It's a fibrinoid necrosis and intravascular thrombosis. So when there is a fibrinoid necrosis in the small vessels along with intravascular thrombosis, in a patient of acute severe hypertension with target organ damage, this is called as malignant hypertension. Hypertensive, again, it's an acute severe hypertension, it's an emergency. It's a complication of malignant hypertension. Here, the hypertension, acute severe hypertension is associated with headache, nausea, vomiting, convulsions, confusion, stupor, and coma. And if you go for an MRI in this particular patient, it shows typically brain edema. It's more in the occipital than the frontal area. So the posterior part of the brain is subjected to more edema, more occipital than frontal, and it is reversible. This is called as reversible posterior leukoencephalopathy. So what is isolated systolic? See, grade 1. See, if the blood pressure is systole is more than 140, but the diastole remains less than 90, this is called isolated systole. So grade 1 is
ఏం లేదులేమ్మా డబ్బులు కావాలంటే
more than 140, 159 with diastole less than 90, and grade 2 is more than 160 with diastole less than 90. Then how to measure, how to document blood pressure? Measurement of blood pressure is an important issue and it has to be done very carefully because this is the one which is going to commit you to the treatment of the patient. There are certain precautions has to be followed while recording blood pressure. It should, first of all, when you are recording for the first time in a patient, it has to be recorded in both upper limbs as well as in thigh, preferably. One more thing is, you should use appropriate size cup. At least the cup should encircle 80% or 2/3 of the arm circumference. Sound వినపడుతున్నాయి ఎక్కడెక్కడ అంతేనా బయట వాళ్ళు బాగుందా ఓకే కానీ కనపడకుండా పర్లేదు. Suppose if there is a difference in the systolic blood pressure between the two arms of more than 15 millimeters of mercury, this is an important risk factor for CV events. So blood pressure should ideally be measured in both upper limbs and in the thigh when you are measuring for the first time. Then what are the precautions you should take? Patient should be ideally seated comfortably for at least 5 minutes before starting recording blood pressure. The measurements when you are taking, you should reduce by 2 millimeters of mercury per second, and ideally you should record at least 2 recordings has to be done for the first time, and the time between 2 recordings should be minimum of 2 to 5 minutes. So 2 limbs and a lower limb should be recorded. Patient might have taken rest for 5 minutes, and patient, the recording must be done with 2 minutes apart. While you are reducing, you must reduce at a rate of 2 millimeters of mercury per second. And patient, while being usually for clinical and for treatment purposes, the sitting blood pressure is recorded. When you are asking the patient to sit, he must sit with back supported, both foot should be on the ground, arm should be supported on the table, and the cup should be at the level of the heart. A standard bladder of 12 to 13 centimeters, 35 centimeters long is enough for most of the patients. But if the patient is very obese and all, a larger size of cup, maybe 30 centimeters, has to be used. There are various different sizes of cups are available because it's not a theory class. Otherwise, I might have shown you various size cups which are available here. You can see when you come back to the clinics. So the cup should be positioned at the left, the hand should be positioned at the heart, and with the back and arm supported, both foot should be on the ground. Before recording, at least half an hour before, patient might have not consumed any stimulant like caffeine or any drugs. And this is an important thing. And when you are recording, the continuous presence of sound, that is phase 1 of cortical sounds, should be recorded as systole, and disappearance of sounds, phase 5 is considered as diastole. And while we are recording blood pressure, simultaneously you are supposed to record the heart rate also. And prior to that, to avoid palpatory method also, the systolic blood pressure has to be recorded before going for auscultatory method. And in older people and people with diabetes, blood pressure should also be recorded after sitting position in a standing position at 1 minute and 3 minutes, because this is to document any evidence of orthostatic hypotension. What is orthostatic hypotension? This is defined as a reduction in systolic blood pressure of more than 20 millimeters of mercury or diastolic blood pressure of more than 10 millimeters of mercury within 3 minutes of standing. This orthostatic hypotension is also associated with an increased risk of mortality and cerebrovascular events. That is why in patients when you are first recording, more so when the elderly patients and diabetics, orthostatic hypotension present or not has to be recorded. And heart rate should also be recorded at the time of BP measurements because resting heart rate is an independent predictor of CV morbidity. Then what is white coat hypertension? The white coat hypertension is a condition in which the blood pressure is elevated in a hospital setting or in the hospital doctor's chamber, but it is normal when measured by the patient either by ambulatory blood pressure monitoring or by home blood pressure self-monitoring by means of machines, mechanized machines, automatic machines. So when the patient records in his home, either by ambulatory or by means of other automatic machines, the blood pressure he reports it as normal. But whereas if it is reported by measured by a doctor, it will be elevated. This is why it is called as white coat hypertension. Just I am telling this for the purpose of understanding and definition. Then what is masked hypertension? So this is just opposite. The patient reports an increased blood pressure when he measures in his house or by ambulatory methods by means of machines in his house, whereas if the doctor records in his office, it comes as normal. So this is called as white coat hypertension and masked hypertension. And one thing you should remember is this hypertension is predominantly an asymptomatic condition. Most often it's an asymptomatic condition. More than 50% are unaware that they had hypertension unless it is documented, unless it's measured by a doctor or by a paramedic. So these people with an optimal blood pressure, then how often you should see? For a normal person whom the blood pressure is less than 180, which is considered as normal, every 5 years it has to be screened. And for persons with high normal, that is 130 to 139 and diastole around 85 to less than 90, that is less than 140 and less than 90 people, BP has to be recorded every year. And for masked hypertension patient also has to be subjected for screening every year. So now, one more thing you should remember is when for the first time you are making a diagnosis of hypertension, you should not make the diagnosis based on single reading. At least you must record 2 readings, except in certain conditions. For example, if first reading itself is in grade 3 hypertension, there is no need to go for a second reading. You can straight start the patient on management. Why I am specifically telling about hypertension and high altitude is now this Amarnath Yatra is becoming very popular and so many people are going to Amarnath Yatra, which is a high altitude place, Amarnath Yatra and Manas Sarovar. So many patients are coming for certification and for examination for fitness for going to Amarnath Yatra as well as for Manas Sarovar. So what is your opinion? What doctor should do at that condition? The common thing is blood pressure increases with high altitude. So when the person goes to high altitude, blood pressure rises, especially when he goes above 2000 or 3000 meters. So the basic physiology is if the patient ascends up more than 2000 meters, his blood pressure increases. When the patient is already hypertensive, he is definitely at risk. So what the literature says is a person with grade 2 hypertension has an increased cardiovascular mortality if his values are not brought under control if the patient ascends to more than 2,500 meters. So any patient with grade 2 hypertension, if he goes to 2,500 meters and above, unless it is controlled, the risk is high. And patient with grade 1 hypertension can go with an adequate medical treatment, whereas a severe hypertension, that is grade 3 hypertension, should avoid high altitude. So this is about it. Then coming to etiology. See, most of the cases, nearly 80 to 95% of the patients, the hypertension, the cause is not known. What we label it as essential hypertension. So most common what we see is essential hypertension, where the pathogenesis is not clearly understood. Whereas in 5 to 20% of the patients, there may be a secondary causes, means if we identify the cause, probably it can be treated. So consequence of disease or abnormality leading to either sodium retention or peripheral vasoconstriction may be the cause for this. So cause of secondary hypertension. What are some, say I will elucidate some of the cause of secondary hypertension. An alcohol can predispose to high blood pressures. Obesity, more than 30 BMI, is also a risk factor for hypertension. Pregnancy, preeclampsia, renal diseases, both parenchymal as well as structural diseases, glomerular, can also predispose to secondary cause of hypertension. Endocrine diseases like pheochromocytoma, Cushing syndrome, acromegaly, hyper and hypothyroidism, adrenal hyperplasia, Liddle syndrome, hyperparathyroidism are some of the conditions where patient can have hypertension. And some of the drugs which we use in day in and day out can also predispose to hypertension. For example, OC pills, oral contraceptive pills, especially estrogen-based oral contraceptive pills, can cause hypertension. And one more thing, erythropoietin, which is very frequently used in CKD patients, can also predispose to hypertension. Steroids, NSAIDs, and recreational drugs like cocaine can also predispose to hypertension. And anti-malignancy drug like cyclosporin can also cause hypertension. In addition, some of the diseases like coarctation of aorta and obesity with obstructive sleep apnea can predispose to development of hypertension. This coarctation of aorta can be diagnosed by means of estimating the blood pressure in upper limb and lower limbs. That is why when you are recording blood pressure the first time, both upper limbs and thigh must be recorded. By recording upper limbs as well as the thigh, you can make a clinical diagnosis of coarctation of aorta. Okay, so these are some of the causes of secondary hypertension. So alcohol, obesity, pregnancy, renal diseases, endocrine diseases, drugs, coarctation, sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea can all be the cause for secondary hypertension. Then clinically, when do you suspect secondary hypertension? When the patient comes to you, what are things that make you to suspect probably a case of secondary hypertension? Pulse rate, an increased pulse rate. Probably you have to suspect. All increased pulse rate may not be secondary hypertension. Pheochromocytoma, thyrotoxicosis has to be kept in mind. If the other things also adjust. For example, pheochromocytoma patient can have headache, sweatings, in addition to cardiac palpitations. Moon phases may be Cushing syndrome or secondary to steroid abuse. Papillary edema suggests raised ICT. And differential BP measurements. Coarctation of aorta, as already told you. For example, if you hear a renal bruit, a renal artery stenosis, yes, this can be a cause of secondary hypertension. Adenotonsillar hypertrophy seen in case of obstructive sleep apnea can be a pointer towards a cause of secondary hypertension. A malar rash may be seen in SLE, and that may be a cause for secondary hypertension. And when do you suspect? What are the physical patient characteristics that should raise the suspicion of secondary hypertension? An younger patient, less than 40 years, with a grade 2 hypertension or onset of any grade of hypertension in childhood, you should suspect secondary hypertension. Aggressively, you should investigate and rule out. You should not miss any treatable cause of hypertension. So when you see a younger patient, an adolescent with a grade 2 hypertension, or a young patient of less than 40 years, probably you have to aggressively investigate this patient for any identifiable treatable causes. Sudden worsening of hypertension in a patient who is already previously documented chronically, who is stable patient, he is on treatment. Sudden worsening, probably in this patient, you have to see any secondary causes which are dissipated, probably a drug, maybe a steroid abuse, etc. Resistant hypertension, I will let you know that when I will tell about therapeutics. Then grade 3 hypertension or any hypertensive emergency, in all these conditions, you must aggressively search for any treatable cause or secondary causes, which may be the reason for aggravation has to be corrected. Presence of extensive target organ damage, hypertension mediated organ damage is also one thing that make you to suspect a secondary hypertension. Clinical or biochemical features suggestive of any endocrine diseases, CKD. Clinical features suggestive of obstructive sleep apnea. All these things has to be kept in mind when you can identify. Then what are the target organs that are damaged? Target organs that are damaged are heart and blood vessels, the central nervous system, kidney and retina are the important structures that are damaged in hypertension. So what happens to the blood vessels? The blood vessels of large size blood vessels, for example, more than 1 millimeter arteries, there will be hypertrophy of the blood, muscular tissue. The internal elastic lamina becomes thickened, fibrous tissue gets deposited, so the vessels become tortuous and dilated. Whereas the small sized vessels, there will be fibrinoid necrosis in the small sized vessels. So these changes in the vessel, these pathological changes in the vessels will predispose to increased peripheral vascular resistance and increased formation of sometimes thrombus also. So this increased peripheral vascular resistance perpetuates further aggravation of blood pressure, and this also causes decreased or ischemia in certain zones. Next is heart. So what are the structures of the heart that are involved when the patient is hypertensive? There is a pressure overload on the left ventricle. This predisposes to left ventricular hypertrophy. The compliance of the left ventricle suffers, then left atrial pressure increases. Patient can go for pulmonary edema or acute pulmonary edema or heart failure. Acute decompensated heart failure can happen. So heart failure and left ventricular hypertrophy, acute decompensated heart failure, flash pulmonary edema, all these things can occur in a patient in heart. And hypertension is an important risk factor for acute coronary syndrome, for an acute MI, etc. In addition, it can predispose to arrhythmias. For example, atrial fibrillations is one of the important arrhythmia. Hypertensive people can develop atrial fibrillations. So this is an important arrhythmia in these patients. Then coming to the central nervous system. In central nervous system, patient can develop anything, any cerebrovascular accident, either ischemic or hemorrhagic or subarachnoid hemorrhage. Patient can go for TIA. As I already told, it's hypertensive encephalopathy is also common in these patients. So these are all things, some things which can happen. Then in the kidney, patient can develop parenchymal disease, renal failure. So now hypertension after diabetes is one of the important cause for chronic kidney disease and maintenance dialysis. Then coming to retina. In the fundus, the fundus, there are a lot of changes described and it has been divided into 4 grades. As I already told you, the narrowing and tortuous vessels causes the grade 1 is called as grade 1 hypertension retinopathy. When you see the fundus, they will appear as silver whites because of increased reflection. The tortuous thickened vessels, when you see over the fundus, they appear as silver whites because of the large amount of reflection of the rays. When these vessels cross over the veins, they cause the constrictions at the place of crossover, what is called as AV nippings. This is grade 2 hypertensive retinopathy. And in grade 3, because of these vessels in the changes, there may be ischemic changes in the retina, which can predispose to what is called as soft exudates, as well as there may be dot and flame-shaped hemorrhages. And when the patient can also develop edema of the macular disc. This is called as papilledema, what is called as grade 4 retinopathy. So the hypertension can cause grade 1 to grade 4 retinopathy, and in hypertension, encephalopathy, and malignant hypertension, you can see papilledema. So these are all some of the target. So heart and blood vessels, central nervous system, kidney, and retina are the conditions, are the target organs which are preferentially damaged in case of hypertension. So when you are examining the patient, the target organ damage has also to be assessed and documented. For example, heart, when there is a heaving apex, there may be a fourth heart sound, where heart failure may be revealed by means of a jugular venous pulse. Second heart sound, A2 may be prominent. So these are things like that you have to document. Then what are the mechanisms that underlie this hypertension? See, this essential hypertension, some of the genetic factors and familial factors have also been identified. There is what is called as an alpha-dysin gene, which has been found to be very common in these patients, in this group of patients who are more having, family is having hypertension, and hypertension developing in young family, young persons. So genetic and familial, and certain of the loci of genes have also been identified, which foretell the damage to the kidney as well as. So some genetic loci has also been identified for hypertension and in families who are running hypertensives. And interplay of genetic as well as environmental factors will contribute to the development of hypertension in many of the essential hypertensions. And next is renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. As you know, this renin converts angiotensin I to angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 is converted by means of converting enzyme. So angiotensin 2 is a powerful vasopressor. This can act on both angiotensin 1 and angiotensin 2 receptors and angiotensin 1 and 2 receptors. So this renin-angiotensin system can predispose to salt retention, can predispose to fluid retention, can be a mechanism as well as a cause for perpetuation of hypertension and heart failure. Then baroreceptors. See, when you in day-to-day life, as you change from position to position, your blood pressure, blood volume, and heart rate are nicely controlled by means of your autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is having arterial baroreceptors in the aortic arch as well as in the carotid sinus. There is a cardiopulmonary receptor situated in the heart as well as in thoracic veins. These receptors will send an inhibitory sympathetic impulses to the splanchnic as well as to the renal circulation when there is a sense of increased blood volume causing reduced renin secretion and increased secretion of sodium into the proximal converting tubule. This also causes increased vasopressin leading to decreased ADH and increased urine output. So these baroreceptors, arterial baroreceptors and cardiovascular baroreceptors, by causing inhibitory sympathetic stimulation as well as stimulatory parasympathetic stimulation on the sinus SA node causes decrease the heart rate. So these baroreceptors, by having their effect on blood volume, blood pressure and heart rate, they also day-to-day maintain the blood pressure. Then some important information has to be collected from when you are taking a family history of these patients. Any family or personal history of hypertension, any history of stroke in the family, any history of CKD or renal disease, any history of cardiovascular disease has to be documented when you are taking history of the patient. Family and personal history associated with risk factors. Any familial history of hypercholesterolemia, smoking history, detailed diet history and salt intake with a specific reference to salt intake, and his physical activity has to be documented. Whether there is any erectile dysfunction, what about his sleep history, any snoring, will say sleep apnea, especially in an obese patient. Any history of hypertension in pregnancy has to be documented. And in addition, so when you are taking history, any history of target organ damage, stroke and renal disease like brain and eyes, headache, vertigo, syncope, impaired vision, any history of transient ischemic attacks, any history of sensory motor deficit, etc. has to be recorded. Any history of chest pain, shortness of breath previously, any history of edema, previous MI, any history of previous surgeries, any history of syncopal attacks, history of palpitations, history of any heart failure has to be, previous medical history has to be recorded. And regarding kidney, increased thirst, polyuria, nocturia, any hematuria, recurrent urinary tract infections all has to be recorded. And peripheral arteries, cold extremities, intermittent claudication. This is almost like an angina. Pain-free walking distance. What is the distance you can walk without any pain? And family history of any CKD or polycystic disease of the kidney has to be documented. So this is about. So in the next class, I will let you know how to examine the patient, what are the things, how to take history, how to examine, and what the treatment modalities patient has to be subjected to will be talked in the next subsequent class. So management, evaluation, and evaluation in special situations like pheochromocytoma, primary aldosteronism, etc. will be taught in the, and what patient education, how to educate the patient, all these things will be dealt in a subsequent class. So as a summary, today I told about definition of hypertension, what are the precautions you should take while recording the blood pressure and documenting. What is the etiology? Etiology is mainly, it is essential, and in some of the cases it is secondary. What are the conditions where you should suspect secondary hypertension? What are the physical findings that give a clue as to the diagnosis of secondary hypertension? I already told you. I will repeat for the sake of recollection. So when there is a tachycardia, probably you suspect pheochromocytoma and thyrotoxicosis, moon phases, Cushing syndrome, papilledema, raised ICT, differential measurement of blood pressure coactation, renal bruit and renal artery stenosis, adenotonsillar hypertrophy, obstructive sleep apnea, and malnourishment, obstructive, SLE. So these are the things in physical examination which make you to suspect and go for evaluation of these conditions. And I already told you what is meant by hypertensive crisis, what is an hypertensive urgency, what is hypertensive emergency, what is hypertensive encephalopathy, what is malignant hypertension, what is white coat hypertension, what is masked hypertension, what is resistant hypertension. I will let you in the next class.